Hello. So, in my infinite wisdom, I decided last night would be an excellent night to not sleep and to do a frickload of karaoke. So, my voice is a little bit different, but I'm still gonna read. So, we'll see how this goes. Chapter 2. Transform self-love into empathy. The Law of Narcissism. We all naturally possess the most remarkable tool for connecting to people and attaining social power, and that is empathy. When cultivated and properly used, it can allow us to see into the moods and minds of others, giving us the power to anticipate people's actions and generally lower their resistance. This instrument, however, is blunted by our habitual self-absorption. We are all narcissists, some deeper on the spectrum than others. Our mission in life is to come to terms with this self-love and learn how to turn our sensitivity outward toward others instead of inward. We must recognize at the same time the toxic narcissist among us before getting enmeshed in their dramas and poisoned by their envy. Narcissistic spectrum. From the moment we are born, we humans feel a never-ending need for attention. We are social animals to the core. Our survival and happiness depends on the bonds we form with others. If people do not pay attention to us, we cannot connect to them on any level. Some of this is purely physical. We must have people looking at us to feel alive. As those who have gone through long periods of isolation can attest, without eye contact, we begin to doubt our existence and to descend into deep depression. But this need is also deeply psychological. Through the quality of attention we receive from others, we feel recognized and appreciated for who we are. Our sense of self-worth depends on this, because this is so important to the human animal. People will do almost anything to get attention, including committing a crime or attempting suicide. Look behind almost any action and you will see this need as a primary motivation in trying to satisfy our hunger for attention. However, we face an inevitable problem. There is only so much of it to go around. In the family, we have to compete with our siblings. At school, we have to compete with classmates. At work, we compete with our colleagues. The moments in which we feel recognized and appreciated are fleeting. People can largely be identified to our fate, as they must deal with their own problems. There are even some who are downright hostile and disrespectful to us. How do we handle those movements? How do we handle those moments when we feel psychologically alone or even abandoned? We can double our efforts to get attention and notice, but this can exhaust our energy, and it can often have the opposite effect. People who try too hard seem desperate and repulse the attention they want. We simply cannot rely on others to give us constant validation, and yet we crave it. Facing this dilemma from early childhood on, most of us come up with a solution that works quite well. We create a self-image of ourselves that comforts us and makes us feel validated from within. This self composed of our tastes, our opinions, how we look at the world, what we value. In building this self-image, we tend to accentuate our positive qualities and explain away the flaws. We cannot go too far into this, for it is our self-image. It is too divorced from reality. Other people will make us aware of the will make us aware of the discrepancy, and we will doubt ourselves. But if it is done properly, in the end, we have a self we can love and cherish. Our energy... Okay, good, still recording. Our energy turns inward. We become the center of our attention. When we experience those inevitable moments, when we are alone, or not, feeling appreciated, we can retreat to this self and soothe ourselves. If we have moments of doubt and depression, our self-love raises us up, makes us feel worthy, and even superior to others. This self-image operates as a thermostat, helping us to regulate our doubts and insecurities. We are no longer completely dependent on others for attention and recognition. We have self-esteem. This idea might seem strange. We generally take this self-image completely for granted, like the air we breathe. It operates on a largely unconscious bias. We don't feel or see the thermostat as it operates. The best way to literally visualize this dynamic is to look at those who lack a coherent sense of self, people who we shall call deep narcissists. You could recognize deep narcissists by the following behavioral patterns. If they have ever insulted or challenged, they have no defense, nothing internal to soothe or validate their worth. They generally react with great rage, thirsting for vengeance, full of a sense of righteousness. This is the only way they know how to assuage their insecurity. In such battles, they will position themselves as a wounded victim, confusing others and even drawing sympathy. They are prickly and oversensitive. Almost everything is taken personally. They can become quite paranoid and have enemies in all directions to point to. You can see an impatient or distant look on their face whenever you talk about something that does not directly involve them in some way. They immediately turn the conversation back to themselves with some story or anecdote to distract from the insecurity behind it. They can be prone to vicious bouts of envy if they see others getting attention they feel they deserve. They frequently display extreme self-confidence. This always helps to gain attention, and it neatly covers up their gaping inner emptiness and their fragmented sense of self. But beware, if this confidence is ever truly put to the test. Let us imagine narcissism as a way of gauging the level of self-absorption, as if it existed in a measurable scale from high to low, a certain depth, let us say below the halfway mark on the scale. People enter the realm of deep narcissism. Once they reach this depth, it is very difficult for them to raise themselves back up because they lack the self-esteem device. The deep narcissist becomes completely self-absorbed and almost always below the mark. If it is for a moment they manage to engage with others, some comment or action will trigger their insecurities and they will go plummeting down. Oh, man. But mostly, they tend to sink deeper into themselves over time. Other people are instruments. Reality is just reflection of their needs. Constant attention is their only way of survival. Above that halfway mark is what we shall call the functional narcissist, where most people reside. We also are self-absorbed, but what prevents us from falling deep into ourselves is a coherent sense of self that we can rely upon and love. This creates some inner resiliency. We may have deeper narcissistic moments fluctuating below the mark, particularly when we are depressed or challenged in life. But inevitably, we elevate ourselves, not feeling continually insecure or wounded, not always needing to fish for attention. Functional narcissists can turn their attention outward into their work and into building relationships with people. Our task as students of human nature is threefold. First, we must fully understand the phenomena of the deep narcissist. Although they are in the minority, some of them can inflict unusual amount of harm in the world. We must be able to distinguish the toxic types that stir up the drama and try to turn us into objects they can use for their purposes. They can draw us in with their unusual energy. But if we become enmeshed, it can be a nightmare to disengage. They are the masters at turning the tables and making others feel guilty. Narcissist leaders are the most dangerous of all. We must resist their pull and see through the facade of their apparent creativity. Knowing how to handle the deep narcissists in our lives is an important art for us all. Second, we must be honest about our own nature and not deny it. We are all narcissists. In a conversation, we are all champing at the bit to talk, to tell a story, to give our opinion. We like people who share our ideas. They reflect back to us good taste. If we happen to be assertive, we see assertiveness as a positive quality because it is ours, whereas others, more timid, will rate as an obnoxious and value introspective qualities. We are all prone to flattery because of our self-love. Moralizers who try to separate themselves and denounce narcissists in the world today are often the biggest narcissists of them all. They love the sound of their own voice. They point fingers and preach. We are all on the spectrum of self-absorption. Creating a self that we can love is a healthy development, and there should be no stigma attached to it. Without self-esteem from within, we would fall into deep narcissism. But to move beyond functional narcissism, which should be our goal, we must first be honest with ourselves. Trying to deny our self-absorbed nature, trying to pretend we are somehow more altruistic than others, makes it impossible for us to transform ourselves. Third, and most important, we must begin to make the transformation into the healthy narcissist. Healthy narcissists have a stronger, even more resilient sense of self. They tend to hover closer to the top of the scale. They recover more quickly from any wounds or insults. They do not need as much validation from others. They realize at some point in life they have limits and flaws. They can laugh at these flaws and not take slight so personally. In many ways, by embracing the full picture of themselves, their self-love is more real and complete. From this stronger inner position, they can turn their attention outward more often and more easily. This attention goes in one of two directions, and sometimes both. First, they are able to direct their focus and their love into their work, becoming great artists, creators, and inventors. Because their outward focus is the work, because their outward focus on the work is more intense, They tend to be successful in their ventures, which gives them the necessary attention and validation. They can have moments of doubt and insecurity, and artists can be notoriously brittle. But work stands as a continual release from too much self-absorption. The other direction healthy narcissists take is toward people developing empathetic powers. Imagine empathy as the realm lying at the very top of the scale and beyond complete absorption of others. By our very nature, we humans have tremendous abilities to understand people from the inside out. In our earliest years, we felt completely bonded with our mother, and we could sense her every mood and read her every emotion in a proverbial way, unlike any other animal or primate. We also had the ability to extend this beyond our mother to other caregivers and people in our vicinity. This is the physical form of empathy that we feel even to this day with our closest friends, spouses, or partners. We also have a natural ability to take perspective of others, to think our way inside their minds. These powers largely lie dormant because of our self-absorption. But in our 20s and beyond, feeling more confident about ourselves, we can begin to focus outward on people and rediscover these powers. Those who practice this empathy often become superior social observers in the arts or sciences, therapists and leaders of the highest order. Our brains were built for continual social interaction. The complexity of this interaction is one of the main factors that drastically increased our intelligence as a species. At a certain point, involving ourselves less with others has a net negative effect on the brain itself and atrophies our social muscle. To make matters worse, our culture tends to empathize the supreme value of the individual and the individual rights, encouraging greater self-involvement. We find more and more people who cannot imagine that others have different perspectives, that we are not all exactly the same in what we think or desire. You must try to run counter to these developments and create empathetic energy. Each side of the spectrum has its particular momentum. Deep narcissism tends to sink you deeper as your connection to reality lessens and you are unable to really develop your work or your relationships. Empathy does the opposite. As you increasingly turn your attention outward, you get constant positive feedback. People want to be around you more. You develop your empathetic muscle. Your work improves without trying. You gain the attention that humans thrive on. Empathy creates its own upward positive momentum. The following are the 4 components that go into the empathetic skill set. 1. The empathetic attitude. Empathy is more than anything a state of mind, a different way of relating to others. The greatest danger you face is your general assumption that you really understand people and that you can quickly judge and categorize them. Instead, you must begin with the assumption that you are ignorant and that you have the natural biases that will make you judge people incorrectly. The people around you present a mask that suits their purpose. You mistake the mask for reality. Let go of your tendency to make snap judgments. Open your mind to seeing people in a new light. Do not assume they are similar or they share your values. Each person you meet is like an undiscovered country with a very particular psychological chemistry that you will carefully explore, you are more than ready to be surprised by what you uncover. This flexible, open spirit is similar to creative energy, a willingness to consider more possibilities and options. In fact, developing your empathy will improve your creative powers. 2. Visceral empathy. Empathy is an instrument of emotional attunement. It is hard for us to read or figure out the thoughts of another person, but feelings and moods are much easier to pick up. We are all prone to catching the emotions of another person. The physical boundaries between us and other people are much more permeable than we realize. People are continually affecting our moods. What you are doing here is turning this psychological response into knowledge. Pay deep attention to the moods of people as indicated by their body language and tone of voice. Not me, though. This is a sore throat. When they talk, they have a feeling tone that is either sync or not in sync with what they are saying. This tone can be one of confidence, insecurity, defensiveness, arrogance, frustration, elation. This tone manifests itself physically in their voice, their gestures, and their posture. In each encounter, you must try to detect this before even paying attention to what they are saying. This will register you viscerally in your own physical response to them. A defensive tone on their part will tend to create a like feeling in you. 3. Analytic empathy. The reason you are able to understand your friends or partners so deeply is that you have a lot of information about their tastes, values, and family background. We have all had experiences of thinking we know someone, but over time, having to adjust our original impression once we get more information. So while physical empathy is extremely powerful, it must be supplemented by analytic empathy. This can prove particularly helpful with people toward whom we feel resistant and whom we have a hard time identifying, either because they are very different from us or because there's something about them that repels us. In such cases, we naturally resort to judging and putting them into categories. There are people out there who are not worth the effort, supreme fools, true psychopaths. But for most, others who seem hard to figure out, we should see it as an excellent challenge and a way to improve our skills. As Abraham Lincoln said, "I don't like that man. I must get to know him better." Four, empathetic skill. Becoming empathetic involves a process like anything. In order to make sure that you are really making progress and improving your ability to understand people on a deeper level, you need feedback. This can come in one of two forms, direct and indirect. In the direct form, you ask people for their thoughts and feelings to get a sense of whether you have guessed correctly. This must be discreet and based on a level of trust, but it can be a very accurate gauge of your skill. Then there is the indirect form. You sense a greater rapport and have certain techniques have worked for you. Quote, "The deepest principle of human nature is craving to be appreciated." End quote. William James. 3 examples of narcissistic types. The complete control narcissist. The great riddle that the complete control type presents is how people who are deeply narcissistic can also be so charming, and through their charm gain influence. How can they possibly connect with others when they are so clearly self-obsessed? How are they able to mesmerize? The answer lies in the early part of our characters before they turn paranoid and early part of their carriers before they turn paranoid and vicious. These types generally have more ambition and energy than the average deep narcissist. They also tend to have greater insecurities. The only way they can mollify these insecurities and satisfy their ambition is by gaining from others more than usual share of attention and validation, which can really only come through securing social power in either politics or business. Early on in life, these types stumble upon the best means for doing so. As with most narcissists, they are hypersensitive and they are perceived slight. They have fine antennae attuned to people to probe their feelings and thoughts to suss out if there is any hint of disrespect. But what they discover at some point is that this sensitivity can be turned to others to probe their desires and insecurities. Being so sensitive, they can listen to people with deep attention. They can mimic empathy. The difference is that from within, they are impelled not by the need to connect, but by the need to control. By the need to control people and manipulate them. They listen and probe you in order to discover weaknesses to play on. The theatrical narcissist. One of the strange paradoxes about deep narcissism is that it often goes unnoticed by others until the behavior becomes too extreme to ignore. The reason for this is simple. Deep narcissists can be masters of disguise. They sense early on that if they revealed their true selves to others, their need for constant attention and to feel superior, they would repel people. They use their lack of coherent self as an advantage. They can play many parts. They can disguise their need for attention through various dynamic devices. They can go further than anyone in seeming moral and altruistic. They never just give or support the right cause. They make a show of it. Who wants to doubt the sincerity of this display of morality? Or they go in the opposite direction, reveling in their status as a victim, as someone suffering at the hands of others or neglected by the world. It is easy to get caught up in the drama of the moment, only to suffer later, as they consume you with their needs, or they use you for their purpose. They play on your empathy. Your only solution is to see through the trick. Recognize this type by the fact that the focus always seems to be on them. Notice how they are always superior and supposed goodness, or suffering or squalor. See the continual drama and the theatrical quality of their gestures. Everything they do or say is for public consumption. Do not let yourself become collateral damage in their drama. The healthy narcissist, the mood reader. Leaders infect the group with their mindset. Much of this occurs on the nonverbal level as people pick up on the leader's body language and tone of voice. A healthy narcissist imbues himself with an air of complete confidence and optimism and watches how this infects his team's spirit. A strong leader also has to divide his attention almost equally between individuals and the group. If he notices a particular mood among his team, he should try to anticipate what they might do by putting himself in a similar mood. Finally, in detecting any dips in spirit or negativity, the healthy narcissist must be gentle. Scolding will only make people feel ashamed and singled out, which would lead to contagious effects down the road. Better to engage them in talk, to enter their spirit, and to find indirect ways either elevate their mood or isolate them without making them realize what he is doing. What makes us develop these empathetic powers is necessary. If we feel our survival depends on how well we gauge the moods and minds of others, then we will find requisite focus and tap into power. The first step to developing these powers is to realize you have a remarkable social tool that you are not cultivating. The best way to see this is to try it out. Stop your incessant interior monologue and try it out. Stop your incessant interior monologue and pay deeper attention to people. Attune yourself to the shifting moods of individuals and the group. Get a read on each person's particular psychology and what motivates them. Try to take their perspective. Enter their world and value system. You will suddenly become aware of an entire world of nonverbal behavior you never knew existed. Quote, I do not ask the wounded person how he feels. I, myself, become the wounded person. Walt Whitman, end quote. And that's the end of chapter 2. I'm probably going to wait until I've actually slept to do chapter 3. But I'm going to play this back, and if it's not completely terrible, I'm going to post it. Because, little inside fact, I spent nearly 6 hours trying to post chapter 1 because of technical difficulties. Yeah. Oh, and then I did karaoke for like 6 hours because, you know, ADHD. Oh, look, a butterfly. Okay. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I won't see you, but you'll see me next time.